Let's talk about Meta Prosper, a really cool initiative. And for those in our audience who just don't know about it, will you describe the initiative and what you're doing there and give us some of the highlights? Because I'm really pumped about this.
I spent the majority of my career focused on building brands and building companies, and it was always for the general consumer audience. But I've never really built anything with more identity involved for a specific audience like my ethnicity. In 2021, I wrote a piece in Adweek, which is still the highest op-ed on Adweek today, and it was titled, "My People Are Dying in Silence and I'm Here with a Megaphone." And what that was calling out the marketing and advertising industry for not standing with my community in the midst of hate, in the midst of violence, especially after the summer of 2020 for Black Lives Matter, and from 2017 on for the Me Too movement. The advertising and marketing industry has done so much to stand with social justice issues, but when it happened to my community, no one was there to be found. And so I wrote that piece, and what that did was galvanize support for the Asian American community, but also really opened the door to have uncomfortable conversations in corporate America by saying, how are we doing better for the Asian American community, just as we're doing that for the Black community, just as we're doing that for the female community, and what questions or really answers need to be brought to light. One of the things that I kept thinking about was, how can I use this window and how can I use this opportunity to do more tangibly, not just in my spare time and not just outside of work, but through my work. And one of the things Meta is uniquely capable of doing is supporting small businesses. And if you look at how small businesses were disproportionately affected for the Asian American community, these businesses were being vandalized. These businesses were being targeted in hate crimes. 3 out of 4 businesses in the Asian American community were admittedly destined, and after these attacks, to fail and not be successful. And so what I thought was, what if we, Meta, can support the community in a way that can make an impact, not just today, but moving forward. Asian Americans are the fastest growing community in the United States, half of that being fueled by immigration. And one of the biggest things that immigrants do is start small businesses. And so how are we really planning to support this massive wave of people in language, with representation, and build trust with them so that not just they use our products, but they find success with it. And so Meta Prosper is really dedicated to the Asian American community to support small businesses, creators, nonprofits, and really impact the community at large by showing that you caring about your ethnicity isn't something that you do once 5 p.m. hits. It is absolutely something that you should do every single day, every single minute, and here's how we've decided to do it. And it's been probably one of the most impactful things that honestly I've ever created in my entire career, just because, again, I think it represents me not just as a marketer or as a businessman, but it represents me as an Asian American person.
That's amazing. It seems to have been just this idea has now really grown into a movement. Clearly, there's a lot there. I'd love to hear what's happening. Let's talk about what was the moment where this idea became a movement and you're like, we're onto something. The message is hitting. This amazing Asian American community is responding. What was that moment like? What are some of the things you noticed?
I think the biggest thing that I found that really led us to create the first iterations of Meta Prosper was I was the executive sponsor for Asian Pacific American Heritage Month that same year, 2021. We had these ideas, and some of those ideas were translating content that we had already made for training small businesses, but translating them in 6 different languages, from Hindi to Tagalog to Korean to Mandarin. And what we found was, in 2021, that campaign or program for APHM was the highest engagement the company saw, but the lowest sentiment. And you ask yourself, why the lowest sentiment? You look at the comments, and a lot of people were like, I love this so much, but this is just you hitting the moment. And I realized that there's an appetite and a desire for a long-term everyday program. And the good news for us is that the Black community had one called Meta Elevate that really set the infrastructure for us to learn from and really, borrow in many cases. And I think without the Black community and the Latinx community, Meta Prosper wouldn't exist, because it's one thing to see the insight. It's another thing to see how you can operationalize it and make it a thing. And so I look at that moment when I realized the engagement was high, but the sentiment was low, as there's something here. and we need to listen to the community to build something more meaningful.
On the site I saw there was something around, the question was like, what's next? API-owned businesses are the heart and soul of our communities. And can you kind of unpack that, API-owned businesses, and how MetaProsper is supporting and aiming to support and kind of unlock the opportunity for those businesses?
I look at the entrepreneurial spirit of the Asian Pacific Islander community, and in many ways, again, a lot of us are immigrants. And when you're an immigrant, you're not necessarily at equilibrium with other communities, education-wise, socioeconomically. And so small businesses are typically the route to find more economic success in the country. And so when I look at that combined with where people congregate, where people gather, it is in these restaurants, it is in these learning centers, it is in these areas that, again, become more of a heartbeat to the community. I think, just pulling back a little bit, at Meta, we've always said we've always been in the business of small business, and that's because small businesses are what make this country, at least in the American spirit, American dream come true. And I know this from my own grandparents being small business owners, and I'm fourth generation Californian. I'm probably more American than most people, but they were small business owners. The dream that they had isn't just an Asian American dream. It's just, generally speaking, an American dream, period. And so I do think that when I think about the heartbeat of, again, the community, all that is just pumping through the American dream for these people who came to this country to find that. And that goes for every community, to be honest with you. I don't think the Asian community is unique in this regard, but I think the only thing that does make the Asian American community unique in this regard is that it's not just one language following the American dream, it's a multitude of languages. And that nuance is the evolution of the United States that we need to understand. It's one that we need to, and I believe that it's one that we need to continue to adjust for, because the e pluribus unum of it is just that, from many come one. I think the more that MetaProsper can support that, then that means we're doing our job.
This podcast is brought to you by Salesforce and the CMO Club. The CMO Club is a global community for senior marketing executives to come together, share ideas, and solve their toughest challenges in a collaborative and trusted environment with other marketing leaders. Salesforce and the CMO Club provide best-in-class programs, events, and a digital platform for marketing leaders to come together and be inspired like never before. Join our global community at thecmoclub.com.